Welcome to Breaking News to Trading Moves. Our focus today is on this really large proposed merger in the freight rail industry.
We're talking about the $85 billion deal between Union Pacific and Norfolk Southern.
Exactly. And the application for it has officially been filed, which kicks off the whole formal review process. So our mission today is to break down the claims being made, look at the regulatory environment, and really identify the companies that could benefit and those that might lose some ground here.
We are definitely looking at a pivotal moment. I mean, if this combination gets approved, it would create the first truly coast-to-coast U.S. freight railroad. And the implications there, they span everything from logistics to tech spending and, of course, competition for both rail and trucking companies.
Okay, so let's get into the filing itself. What are the core facts of the deal?
So Union Pacific, that's UNP, and Norfolk Southern, NSC, have submitted their merger application to the U.S. Surface Transportation Board, or the STB. And like we said, it's valued at roughly $85 billion. The scale of it is what really commands attention. You're creating one single carrier that spans the continent.
And what's their argument for why this is necessary? What are they telling the regulators?
The core argument is all about service. They claim a single network could dramatically improve transit times and service consistency.
Which is so critical for things like intermodal and other time-sensitive cargo.
It is. The mechanism for this is pretty straightforward. Reduce the handoffs and avoid the bottlenecks, especially at those major interchange hubs.
Right now, a container might go from LA to, say, Chicago on one railway.
On Union Pacific, yeah. And then it has to get handed off to Norfolk Southern to go the rest of the way east. That interchange is a huge choke point.
That's where all the friction is.
All of it. Crew changes, locomotive swaps, cars just sitting there waiting.
Yeah.
It's a constant source of congestion and delays.
So take out the handoff, you get a faster, more reliable path. But, and this is the big but, there's the regulatory hurdle.
A very big hurdle. This is the first major rail merger to be reviewed under the STB's tougher post-2001 rules.
And those rules are different.
Very different.
Yeah.
They require the merging parties not just to justify the deal, but to actively demonstrate that it's going to enhance competition and provide clear benefits to the public interest. That is a very high bar to clear.
And what about the opposition? I assume it didn't take long for them to line up.
No, the pushback started almost immediately. Rival carriers are challenging it, of course. But you also have stakeholder groups, major shippers, voicing concerns over reduced competition and the potential for higher costs. And labor concerns are a primary focus, too.
Okay, let's switch gears and look at the potential winners if this merger actually goes through. We've got three main groups identified.
That's right. The market narrative tends to focus on credible synergy and stronger pricing power, even with all the regulatory risk baked in.
So let's start with the most obvious one. The merging rails themselves. Union Pacific, UNP, and Norfolk Southern, NSC.
Yeah, their potential gain is the most direct. It's that synergy upside. A single end-to-end network just means fewer interchanges, better use of their assets, and a much stronger ability to compete in that intermodal market.
Because they can just be faster.
They can be faster and more reliable. That lets them compete more effectively, not just with other railroads, but with long-haul trucking.
That makes sense. Now, if they're going to make all these promises about service reliability to the regulators, that implies a lot of spending. Which brings us to our second group of winners.
The rail technology and equipment suppliers. Yes.
Because rail integrations like this always drive capital expenditure.
They do. To satisfy regulators, the combined carrier has to commit to service improvements. And that translates into spending on things like locomotive modernization, new braking systems, automation, and fleet upgrades.
So we're talking about companies like Wabtec, that's WAB, Greenbrier, GBX, and Trinity Industries, TRN.
Exactly. And it's more than just new locomotives. Wabtec provides the high-tech control systems, the monitoring tech you need to run a network that big. And Greenbrier and Trinity, they build and lease the actual rail cars. To handle more volume reliably, you need newer, better cars.
Okay, so a win for the merger is a win for the suppliers. That leads to our third group of winners, the intermodal and logistics intermediaries.
These are the 3PLs, the third-party logistics providers. C.H. Robinson, XPO, J.B. Hunt.
And their whole business is basically arbitraging faster, more reliable rail service.
It is. If these new transcontinental lanes become genuinely more reliable, these brokers can route freight more efficiently, they can offer their clients better service levels, and that helps rail gain some market share in certain corridors.
So if rail goes from, say, 60% on time to 85% on time.
The 3PLs are the first to capitalize on that.
Yeah.
They can sell that new reliability to the end shipper.
Yeah.
Maybe they move freight that used to go on a truck over to rail because it's now cheaper but still hits the timeline.
That benefits companies like C.H. Robinson, CHRW, XPO, which is XPO, and JB Hunt, JBHT. But I have to ask, is there a long-term risk here? If the combined railroad becomes so efficient, couldn't they just cut out the middleman and deal directly with shippers?
That's a great question. And yes, that risk absolutely exists down the line. But in the short to medium term, the complexity of managing thousands of smaller shippers and optimizing all these different routes, it still favors the 3PLs. They provide that operational layer,
So immediate gain outweighs the long-term risk, at least for now.
at least for the first few years post-merger, yes.
All right, let's flip this around. Where does this potential consolidation create pressure and disadvantages? We have three groups of potential losers here as well.
And this really gets to the core of the whole regulatory debate. What happens to the competitive landscape when a transcontinental giant emerges?
First up, pretty obviously, would be the competing Class I rails.
Precisely. They suddenly face a relative network disadvantage. Think about a company like CSX, that's CSX, or the Canadian carriers, Canadian Pacific Kansas City, CP, and Canadian National, CNI. A lot of their business relies on taking that handoff cargo from UNP or NSC. If that cargo now just stays on the new combined network from coast to coast,
They lose that revenue stream.
they lose the revenue and they lose market share on those long-haul lanes.
And we have to include Berkshire Hathaway here, BRKB, because of its ownership of BNSF.
Absolutely. BNSF is the other major Western railroad, and it would be facing a much more powerful competitor in UNP. So this forces all of them to react, either by offering concessions to shippers or spending more just to defend their current position.
Okay, moving on to the second group. Long-haul trucking companies that might be exposed to a modal rebalancing.
Right. If rail service on these key long-haul lanes gets reliably faster and more consistent, some of that freight currently moved by truck could shift over to intermodal rail.
This isn't about local delivery, this is purely the cross-country routes.
That's right. It puts pressure on volume and pricing for trucking operations on those specific routes. So we're looking at companies like Knight-Swift, KNX, Saia, SAIA, and ArcBest, ARCB.
So it's not that rail replace all the trucks.
Not at all. But a reliable transcontinental rail option gives the shipper a credible alternative, and that constrains the trucker's ability to raise prices on those lanes.
Makes sense. Okay, finally, our third group of potential losers, the rail-dependent bulk shippers.
This is the group with the least amount of leverage. We're talking about companies that are often called captive or semi-captive.
Meaning they only have one rail line serving their facility.
Exactly. They have limited or no other routing alternatives. So if that one line is now part of this new consolidated giant, their negotiating power could decrease quite a bit.
And that could mean higher freight costs.
It could. For these margin-sensitive bulk shippers, that's a real concern. This includes companies like the agricultural processor, Archer Daniels Midland, ADM, CF Industries, CF, which makes fertilizer, and the steelmaker Nucor, NUE.
So for a company like Nucor, transportation costs for their raw materials and finished steel are a major part of their business.
A major factor, yes. And if their ability to threaten to switch carriers goes away, they lose leverage in those freight negotiations.
So pulling it all together, the entire proceeding really comes down to this fundamental tension. The efficiency gains the railroads are promising versus the competition concerns from, well, pretty much everyone else.
That's the bet the STB has to make. Is the promise of faster, more reliable service worth the potential risk of a less contestable market down the road?
So what does this all mean for you? You have a clear framework now for tracking this regulatory process. You can watch not just for the yes or no on the deal,
But for what specific concessions the STB might demand to make sure competition is maintained?
which brings up a final thought.
What potential long-term technological commitments might the STB require of the combined entity to guarantee those service levels? And how might those requirements affect the equipment suppliers we identified as potential winners?
That's something for you to mull over as this regulatory review continues. Before we wrap up, a mandatory advisory. This is not financial advice or buy or sell recommendations. This is purely the opinion of the author. Thank you for joining us for this analysis.